All right, Jabos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. An exciting day ahead of us. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share. To thank our TAMLUD TORAH sponsor for the month of Iyar, an anonymous sponsorship with Hakaras Hatov to Hashem for all of the blessings He has bestowed upon us. For refuah Shleima, for Devorah Leah, bas Chaya Rivka, may we all be zoche Hashem to witness the imminent coming of mashiach. Amen. Our week of learning sponsor, Hilary Jacobson Kent, in memory of her daughter, Shifra, bas Chana Dena. To thank our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Chaim Rabenstein, in commemoration of the yarhrzeit of Baurch, Naftali ben Hachaver, Moshe, and in honor of 3 more years to the Siyum Hashas. I guess I don't know if anyone's keeping track of the dates. If it's 3 years from today, it would be incredible. Halavai. All right, we should be zoche Hashem that our Torah should give an neshama should give an aliyah to all of the neshamas. Our refuah Shleima to kol cholei Yisrael. Halavai, we should be zoche Hashem to complete Shas together in Metzia Hashem B'karav. So with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Tzadik Test 99, and we are picking up actually literally at the top of Tzadik Test 99. Always nice. Today's actually one of those dapim, hopefully we'll get through it, where really the sugya begins on the top of the daf and literally ends at the bottom of Amud Beis. So Metzia Hashem will hopefully be a nice cycle of Daf Yomi for us. Okay, so let's just remember again, just to orient ourselves a little bit. We were introduced in the Mishnah to a very interesting case, which actually we've seen quoted a number of times before already. I go ahead and I borrow a cow from Ruvain. So the halacha in the Mishnah says as follows. Now, Ruvain and I are not in proximity to each other. So Ruvain is going ahead and sending me this cow. So the Mishnah says, essentially, the topic of the Mishnah is, I'm a shol, I'm a borrower. We know that a borrower has complete liability and complete responsibility. So the shaila is, if the cow is being sent to me, at what point in time does my responsibility begin? That's the shaila. So the Mishnah essentially broke it up into two distinct cases. Case number 1 is where Ruvain, right, is sending me the cow. Remember, I'm borrowing it from Ruvain. Ruvain is sending me the cow, again, in the hand of his son, his eved, right, his shaliach, right? In that case, again, Ruvain retains responsibility for the animal until it gets to me. Case number 2 is where Ruvain is sending it. And by the way, it's not just his son. Even if he sends it in the hands of my son, my eved, my shaliach, if essentially Ruvain is sending this animal of his own volition, I did not ask him to send it to me via an agent, so Ruvain retains responsibility for the cow up until the point that it reaches my hands. Once it reaches my hands, I'm sure then I have responsibility for it. If, however, I say to Ruvain, send it to me, then at that point in time, essentially I'm taking responsibility for the cow even in transit. That's the basic Hazimish. The Gemara says as follows. The top of Tzadik Test, Biad Avdo Chayiv. Supposed to now watch this. So one of the cases that the Gemara gave, that the Mishnah gave, was Ruvain says, hey Silber, you're borrowing my cow. I'd like to send you my cow in the hands of my Eved. My Eved is going to deliver the cow to you. And I say, great, send it. So what does the Mishnah say? At that point, because the animal is being sent based on my direction, therefore I assume responsibility already for the animal in transit. But the Gemara says, Biad Avdo Chayiv, why would I be Chayiv if the animal is being transported in the hands of Ruvain's Eved? If it's Ruvain's Eved, Yad Eved, Ki Yad Rabo. The hand of an Eved is like the hand of his master. So if that's the case, then halacha l'maisa, when the animal is being sent with Ruvain, then ultimately, again, it's as if Ruvain himself is bringing it. If Ruvain himself is bringing it, then Ruvain should have responsibility. The right responsibility should rest with Ruvain until the animal actually gets delivered to me. Take a look at the top Rashi. Biad avdo chayiv b'tmiya. So the Gemara says, the Gemara is asking a kasha. So it says, b'tmiya katani. Amar li hashal shalcha li biad avdecha v'shulcha lo chayiv hashal ba'onseha b'derech. So remember again, based on this, what the Mishnah is saying is like this. If Ruvain goes ahead and I say to Ruvain, sure, send me the animal, and Ruvain sends it with his Eved, so according to the Mishnah, I am chayiv for any extenuating events that happen to that animal. But why? Asks Rashi, V'harei lo yatzas rishus mashil diyad Eved kiyad rabo damya So I'll say, so once again, if the yad of the eved is like the yad of the master, therefore again, Reuven should retain responsibility over anything that happens to that animal until the time that it reaches me. So I'll say there are two answers to this question. Shmuel says, Be'eved ivri de lo kanile gufei. So what are we talking about over here? What kind of eved are we talking about? An eved ivri, a Jewish servant. And I will say the concept that yad eved ki yad rabo, that the hand of the eved is like the hand of his master. That literally, again, the eved is an extension of his master. That's an eved Kanani. Eved Kanani is owned like a piece of property by his master. An eved ivri is an employee. He is not owned by his master. So maybe when the Mishnah says, that if Reuven sends me the cow in the hands of his eved, and he's sending the cow at my direction, that halacha l'maisa, it's I accept all responsibility. That's talking about an eved ivri, because again, once it's being delivered with the eved ivri and it's of my direction, the eved ivri is not considered to be an extension. It's not the hand of Reuven, and therefore I have responsibility for the animal in transit. So that's Shmuel. Rav says not necessarily. If you look at Eved Kanani, you could even go ahead and set it up as a case of an Eved Kanani, where again Reuven is putting it in the hands of his Eved Kanani, and the Eved Kanani is transporting the cow to me at my direction. How could I be responsible for the animal in transit when the Eved Kanani is considered to be an extension of Reuven himself? It's very simple, says Rav. He says, Nase ke'omer lo, because it's as if I said to Reuven, Hikisha b'makol v'hitavo. So let's imagine the following scenario. Imagine Reuven and I are standing a little bit apart, right? I want to go ahead and borrow the cow. And so what do I have to do? We're going to talk about this. I have to do mashiach, right? I have to acquire the cow, right? For sure, to be a borrower. Instead, I said, Reuven, you know what? Give the cow a little zetz, right? Give the cow a little, hit it with the staff, and let it run to me. Since it's running to me at my direction, right, and in my instruction, therefore I acquire it even when it's in transit. So therefore, again, Rav wants to posit, even if we're talking about an Eved Kanani over here, where halacha l'maisa, again, the Eved Kanani is normally considered to be an extension of the master of Reuven. So therefore, I would have thought that when Reuven sends the animal with his Eved Kanani to me, that Reuven retains responsibility the entire time until it reaches me. Since the Eved is an extension of him, Rav says, no, since it's being sent at my direction, I'm telling Reuven, give it to the Eved Kanani, and send the Eved Kanani with the animal. It's as if I'm telling Reuven, give the animal a little zetz on the back, and it's going to run to me. Since the animal is moving at my direction, therefore, halacha l'maisa, I acquire responsibility over it even during transit, even though it's being transported by the Eved Kanani. Okay, so I'll say, two different interpretations of the Eved case in Mishnah. So again, let's just reframe what we're doing over here. We are trying to figure out a very simple question. We did the Mishnah? Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry, I knew I felt a little bit too ahead over here. Okay, so let's go back to the Mishnah. Well, now think about it like this. We're ahead in the Gemara. All right, let's take a look. Thank you for snapping me. This is a very respectful bunch. Okay, so take a look at the Mishnah. I'm so sorry. Let's look quickly. Thank you. V'shachal lo biyad bino, biyad avdo, biyad shlucho. So we'll say, now listen to this. So again, now I'm borrowing. I'm sorry. Okay, I am borrowing a cow from Reuven. So I'll say, so now what happens? Reuven goes ahead and sends the cow to me. So obviously the cow is in a different, it's an off-site animal, right? Reuven is sending me the cow. V'shulchalo biyad bino, biyad avdo, biyad shlucho. And Reuven sent me the cow again in the hands of his son, his eved, his shaliach. O biyad bino, biyad avdo, biyad shlucho shel shoel. Or he sends it in the hands of my son, my eved, or my shaliach, umesa, and the animal dies in transit, pater. I will say, I, the barama pater. Now, again, what's the logic? The logic is that halacha l'maisa, Reuven is doing this of his own volition. So because I did not ask him to send the cow, obviously from my perspective, I would be just as happy, or maybe would even prefer that Reuven deliver the animal himself. See, he's choosing to send it with a shaliach. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, Reuven retains all responsibility over the animal. Okay. Amar lo hashoel shilcha li biyad bino, biad bini, biad avdi, biad shluchi. Oh, biad bincha, biad avdecha, biad shluchacha. So I will say, but if I say to Reuven, send me the animal. You send me the animal. Send me the animal in the hand of your son, your Eved, your Shaliach. Or send me the animal in the hands of my son, my Eved, my Shaliach. Oh, sha'amar lo hamashio. Or, for example, right? So I will say, in that case, I'm initiating the delivery. Right? I'm saying to Reuven, deliver it to me. I'm asking you, deliver it to me in the hands of your son, your Eved, your Shaliach. Or, my son, my Eved, my Shaliach. Or, O Sha'amar lo hamashil, harini mishalcha lecha biyad bini, biyad avdi, biyad shluchi. Or, Reuven says to me, listen, Silber, I want to deliver the animal to you. I'd like to deliver it to you in the hands of, right? I'd like to deliver it to you through my son, my Eved, my Shaliach. Oh, biyad bincha, biyad avdecha, biyad shluchacha. Or the hands of your Eved, your son, your Shaliach. And I say to Reuven, Shalach, go for it. Go for it. V'shilcha u'mesa, and Reuven sends it, and the animal dies in transit. Chayiv. I, the borrower, am chayiv. So we'll say, v'chein b'shash shemachzir. All of the same halachos apply ultimately when we return the animal. So we'll get to that in just a second. So we'll say, so bottom line, because as I said before, outside, now we see it inside the Mishnah. So there are essentially two cases. Case number one, right? It's the same case. I am borrowing an animal from Reuven. The animal needs to be delivered. Animal needs to be delivered. So two cases. If halacha l'maisa, Reuven goes ahead and sends it of his own volition, whether he's sending it with his people or my people, but he's initiating and overseeing the process and did not consult me, he has Reuven has full responsibility until the animal reaches me. If, however, the animal is being sent to me, either because I said to Reuven, send it to me, whether it's being sent with my people or his people, or for that matter, if Reuven said, I'd like to send you the animal, and I say, yes, send it, at that point, I, the borrower, have responsibility over the animal in transit. That's the halacha. And the Mishnah just ends off by saying, all of the halachos that apply, right, when I'm receiving the animal, the same halachos apply when I'm returning the animal. So same idea. Again, if I borrowed it for a year, now I'm returning it. If halacha l'maisa, I just send it back to Reuven, and I don't ask Reuven's permission, I just send it back, then I retain full responsibility for the animal in transit. If, however, I said to Reuven, I'm sending it back to you, is that okay? Reuven says, yes. Or Reuven says, please send it back to me, either with my people or your people, then Reuven has responsibility while the animal is in transit being returned. Good? Fine, we'll say, good, thank you. That's our Mishnah. We'll say now it's Avik Tessim with Aleph. Look, we're ahead already. Baruch Hashem. So four lines down from the top. So we'll say, so now we saw two interpretations of the case of Eved. Shmuel says, the case of Eved is a case of Eved Ivri, right? And that's why, again, since Eved Ivri is not an extension, right? Eved Ivri is not an extension of Reuven. That's why, again, when Reuven sends it to me in the hands of his Eved, based on my request or with my consent, I'm going to have responsibility. Rav says it could even be a case of Eved Ivri, but since it's happening with my consent or my request, therefore, again, it's as if I'm telling Reuven, give the animal a little zetz on the back, and the animal's coming of its own volition, and therefore, again, I'm responsible for the animal in transit. Okay, incredible. So Meisvei, so reizich Hashem, I'll say 4 lines down from the top, last word on line 99a, so Meisvei, Hasholas hapara v'shilcha lo biyad beno, biyad shlucho, chayiv, biyad avdo, potter. So we have an interesting brisa here. So the brisa says as follows. The brisa says, if I borrow, this is similar to the Mishnah, but yet a little bit different. I go ahead and I borrow a cow from Reuven. I'm borrowing a cow from Reuven. And what happens? V'shulcha lo biyad beno, biyad shlucho, chayiv. So, and Reuven sends it to me in the hands of his son, or the sons, or the hand of his shaliach. Ultimately, again, chayiv. Now, I will say, now, this must be talking about a case. Chayiv means am chayiv. I, the bar, am chayiv. Rashi points out over here that this must be a case where halacha l'maisa, I'm telling Reuven to send it. Because remember, again, as you've seen from the Mishnah, anytime I'm telling Reuven to send the animal in the hands of a third party, or Reuven asks me if he should, and I say yes, then I have responsibility. Yet, what does the Brisa say? Biyat avdo potter. But yet, I will say, if Reuven sends the animal in the hands of his Eved, even though, again, I'm telling Reuven to do it. I'm telling Reuven, send it with your Eved. If something happens to the animal in transit, Potter, I am exempt. I don't have responsibility. So Rabbi says, so let's analyze this. So this price is interesting because this price, so unlike the Mishnah, which always groups together son, shliach, and eved, the price here is making a distinction between saying, so again, let's just frame the case. I say to Ruvain, right, I want to borrow your animal. No problem. The animal is in a distant location. I say, Ruvain, do me a favor, send it to me. So obviously, since I'm saying send it to me, that means I have responsibility for the animal in transit. The interesting part about this brisa is, the brisa says, if Ruvain sends it with his son or with his shaliach, and something happens to the animal in transit, I am responsible. If he sends it with his eved, and something happens in transit, I'm not responsible. So how do I understand this? So watch this. So Bishlam Shmuel. So according to Shmuel, this makes sense because Masnisin be'eved ivri, Brisa be'eved kinani. So this makes perfect sense. The Brisa, let's work backwards. The Brisa that says that I'm not chayiv if something happens to the animal in transit. When Ruvain sends it with his eved, what kind of eved are we talking about? An eved kinani. We'll say, how do we view an Eved Kanani? Eved Kanani is viewed as property. And therefore, the Eved Kanani himself is viewed as a direct extension of Ruvain. So it's essentially, in other words, when Ruvain has his Eved Kanani delivering the animal to me, it's the same thing as if what? As if Ruvain himself delivered the animal. It's the same exact thing. Therefore, again, since we would all agree that if Halacha L'maisa Ruvain himself delivered the animal, so again, then Ruvain would retain responsibility until the moment that he dropped it off at my house. So to his Eved Kanani retains responsibility. The Mishnah, which grouped Eved together with son and Shaliach, must be dealing with what? An Eved Ivri. So an Eved Ivri is not considered to be like the hand of Ruvain, and therefore if Ruvain sends it with his Eved Ivri, and I either requested the delivery or consented to the delivery, so I have responsibility. Incredible. Rav Kasha. But how do you distinguish according to Rav? Remember, I will say, Rav said that it really doesn't matter what kind of Eved it is, whether it's an Eved Kanani or an Eved Ivri. If the animal is being delivered based on my consent or request, it's as if I said to Ruvain, give the animal a little smack, let it move, and since it's moving of my direction, therefore I retain responsibility. You say, how would Rav interpret the distinction? How would Rav resolve the contradiction between the Brisa and the Mishnah? No. Lo tema nase ke'omerle, ela ema bi'omerle, hekisha b'makel v'hisavo. So Rav says, no. Sending it with an Eved is not as if you said, go ahead and give the animal a little zetz and have it move. Rather, again, Rav interprets the case in the Mishnah as saying, literally, I said to Ruvain, hit the animal and make it come to me. That's the case of Eved. Hit the animal and make it come to me. So the Mishnah is talking about where literally I said this, and the Brisa is talking about where I didn't say it. So if I didn't say it, I don't take responsibility until the point that it actually gets to me. If I did say it, I take responsibility even for the animal in transit. Incredible. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, lo tema. Rashi says, kidetirtsa rav nase ke'omerlo ela rav mukilo lemasnisin bi'amarle. In other words, it's not what was before, and we're looking at Rav as saying it's as if I say to Ruvain, give the animal a little patch and it'll come towards me. No. Rav says the Mishnah is talking about a case where I actually said this. Anasek omerle be'omerle hikisha b'makal v'itavo acharai de shabid nafshe nafka mechatzero umishum de shalach avdo ima lo miftar. So Rabbi says, so halacha l'maisa. Rav is setting up the Mishnah that ultimately, although the Eved is escorting the animal, it's not really the Eved that's transporting the animal. The animal is kind of coming because of the smack, right? Because of the little patch. So because of that, and therefore because I instructed Ruvain to initiate that patch, therefore halacha l'maisa, I bear responsibility for the animal in transit. Incredible. The Itmar, Samar backs us up. The Itmar, hashileni parascha. I said, Ruvain, do me a favor and lend me your cow. Amashad, lend me your cow. V'amarle biyad mi, and Ruvain says, who should I send it with? In other words, what should I do? Okay, I'm happy to lend it to you. How do I get it to you? V'amarle hikisha b'makel v'tavo. And ultimately, again, and I say to Ruvain, just hit it. Right? Literally, again, give it a patch with the staff. and it'll come running to me, and that's how I'll get it. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman. So again, the point over here is that is an example of a case where I have liability for transit. So since transit, or I should say delivery, is being initiated through my instruction, therefore I have responsibility ultimately again for the animal in transit. Also, it's an interesting Musar Haskell if we think about it a little bit, that this idea of being responsible for an animal in transit. Right? So this case is especially interesting because up until now, we were focusing on this idea that the animal is actively being transported by someone. Right? I'm borrowing a cow from Ruvain, and halacha l'maisa, he is delivering it with an eved, a shaliach, right? His son. So fine, which makes sense. So now, if I either instructed delivery or consented to delivery, I, as the borrower, have responsibility for the animal in delivery, in transit. What's interesting about this last case, according to Rav, is what am I doing? I'm saying, Ruvain, hit the animal, right? Patch the animal, and it's going to come running towards me. And therefore, again, because the patch was initiated by me, therefore I have responsibility for the animal in transit. I will say, which is an interesting Musar Haskell in that, in life, when you initiate, sometimes there are certain things that I put into motion. I'm not necessarily actively choreographing them, right? I don't necessarily have my hands on it, but Lamaisa, again, I've initiated it. If I put the wheels in motion, I bear responsibility for that. This happens in life sometimes where I create a situation because of certain things that I did. The situation is kind of unfolding without my direct manipulation or without my direct involvement, but I put it into action. I initiated the process. The halacha says, if you put the wheels in motion for something, you're responsible for that. You're responsible for that. So we'll say, how often does it happen where I make a comment, right? The comment elicits a reaction from someone else, and that creates a whole chain reaction of events. I say, well, I didn't do anything. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. If you create a chain reaction, if you kind of set into motion a certain series of events by something that I did, then there is responsibility. Maybe not complete responsibility, but there's absolutely responsibility for having set those series of events in motion. It's an interesting, I think I'm thinking about a lot of ways to plug in this concept, but a lot of times I think if I'm not biyadayim doing something, I'm not responsible. But it's not true. You get something in motion, whether it's conflict or whether it's something else that could be chas v'shalom deleterious, you have responsibility for initiating certain processes, even if you're not overseeing them with your own hands. The Gemara goes back to Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Baravua, Amar Rav Kigon, Shiyatasa mirshus mashil umesa chay. So also I said this case. So once again, I'm sorry, I should have finished the sentence. So once I said to Ruvain, I want to borrow your cow. Go ahead and give it a little patch with the stick so it comes running towards me. The moment that it leaves the reshus of Ruvain, I am responsible. So I'll say, so this is important. So just imagine for a moment, Ruvain and I have adjoining fields, right? So now I'm saying to Ruvain, I want to borrow your cow. We have big fields. I say, Ruvain, I yell to Ruvain, just hit it. Just hit it comes running towards me. So once Ruvain hits it, it comes running towards me. I assume responsibility for the animal in transit. However, I only assume responsibility for the animal in transit once it leaves Ruvain's reshus. So for example, if Ruvain hits the animal's running towards me, which is, everything is great over here, right? I guess having a cow running towards you is a good thing, right? So it's running towards me, and the animal trips and breaks its leg in Ruvain's field. That's not my responsibility, right? Why? Because the animal is still in Ruvain's domain. But once the animal leaves Ruvain's domain, then I assume responsibility for the animal in transit, since it was initiated at my request. Okay, incredible. So the Gemara says, Nema Metzia. So we'll say, let's bring a proof to this idea. Hashideni parascha. I say to Ruvain, lend me your cow. Va'amarle biyad me. And Ruvain says, okay, who should I send it with? Va'amarle hikishu b'makal vitavo. So I say, Ruvain, don't send it with anyone. Just hit it with a staff, hit it with a stick, and it'll come towards me. So what's the halacha? Keven sheyatzeh samir shos mashil umeisa chayiv. Once the animal leaves Ruvain's domain, right? Ultimately, again, I assume all responsibility for it. Amar Ravashi. So Ravashi says, "Hacham asking, on what's the case we're dealing with over here? Kigon shahaisa chatzero shel shoel lifnim mechatzero shel mashiel." So the Gemara is interesting. Sets this up in a very specific way. Where what are we talking about over here? Where Tzorbo says, so again, I'm borrowing the cow from Ruvain. I say, Ruvain, get me the cow. Ruvain says, how should I get it to you? I say, Ruvain, just give it a patch with the staff. The animal will come running towards me, and again, and then I assume responsibility. So Rav Ashi sets this up as a case of where my chutzner is actually inside of Ruvain's chutzner. So I have a chutzner on the interior of Ruvain's chutzner. Lifnim bechatzer shel mashil. Look at Rashi. Lifnim bechatzer shel mashil. Shechatzer shel mashil psucha l'reshus harabim. Ruvain's chutzner is open to the public domain to reshus harabim. The chutzner hashoa lifnim mimenu upechusa upesucha lechatzer shel mashil. And so my chutzner is inside of Ruvain's chutzner. Doesn't open up to the reshus harabim. Instead, only opens up to Ruvain's chutzner. So the only way ultimately again to get into my chatzar is through Ruvain's chatzar. The hasam samcha daiti the shoel dicheshem amido habaylim lefonei latos letzad chatzar shel shoel umachi lebechutra vaday lahasam riyata. So Moshe says this is actually interesting qualification over here. When do we say that this concept of hitting the animal and the animal running towards me, that I, the borrower, assume responsibility? So if you think about this is a very dangerous proposition, right? An animal is still an animal. So you're going to hit the animal. Now you tell me once the animal is moving because I instructed Ruvain to hit it, that I bear full responsibility. So the Gemara is limiting the scope of where this kind of case works, which is a case, for example, of where I'm borrowing the animal from Ruvain and my chutzner is inside of Ruvain's chatzar. So in other words, if you could imagine, there's reshus harabim, then from the Siyum you walk into Ruvain's chatzar, and then if you keep walking through Ruvain's chatzar, my chatzar is behind Ruvain's chatzar. Or it could be behind Ruvain's chatzar, or literally again enveloped by Ruvain's chatzar, but the point is, the only way to access my property is through Ruvain's property. So in a case like that, where if Ruvain orients the animal in the right direction, and then gives it the patch, the animal is not going to get itself into trouble. It's not going into the reshus harabim. It's only going to go to my chatzar. That's a case where this kind of setup could work. Then it could work. Finish up Rashi. Rashi says over here, avalim haisa. In that case, again, I'm willing to take responsibility for the animal while it's in transit. Because since transit is only in one direction, and that direction is from Ruvain's chatzar to my chatzar, I am willing to take responsibility for that. Aval, Rashi says, however, im haisa tzricha lavav derech sarabim liolam emulacha afilu amar lehachi lo sam chadaita sheyafkirena hamashil below shomer velo shibeit nafshe acha taval yado. So we'll say, but like for example, if the animal has to cross reshus harabim, so of course I am not taking responsibility for that. Like in other words, this concept that if I'm borrowing from Ruvain and I say to Ruvain, go ahead and just give the animal a patch and let it come towards me, the Gemara is just further defining the limitations of that concept, that is going to work where it's a straight shot between Ruvain's chatzar and my chatzar with no intervening reshus harabim. However, if there is an intervening public domain, this is a very bad idea, and there's absolutely no way I'm taking responsibility for that. Okay, so the Gemara goes weiter. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep on finishing. Because in this case, where my chatzar is inside or behind Ruvain's chatzar, vadei lahasam azla. Ultimately, again, there's no doubt that the animal is going to go in the right direction. I.e. hachi. So we'll say if that's the case, then I don't understand what's the chiddush. So obviously, we're talking about a case over here where halacha l'maisa again, I'm borrowing a cow from Ruvain. My chatzar is inside of Ruvain's chatzar. So the only way to access my chatzar is through Ruvain's chatzar. I say, Ruvain, I'm borrowing the animal. Give the animal a patch. Have it go towards me. So of course, once it enters into my domain, I accept full responsibility. What's the chiddush of that? To which the Gemara says, no, lo tzricha di'iga gazaisa. I will say, because at the end of the day, there are still certain clefts or certain nooks and crannies where halacha l'maisa, the animal could kind of get lost and not come to me. In other words, even though there is no intervening public domain between my chatzar and Ruvain's chatzar, but Reuven's chatzar still has plenty of hiding places or plenty of other places where the animal could kind of get lost. So I might have thought that because that could happen, maybe this setup doesn't work, and hitting the animal to come to me, even though my chatzar is inside of Reuven's chatzar, I shouldn't assume responsibility. Kamash Malon, no, as long as there is no danger of the animal mamish really getting lost, like in a different reshus or rabim, if I, the bar, am initiating this process, I bear full responsibility. Incredible. So the Gemara says, what would you have thought? Lo samcha daite dilma kaima hasav lo asya azla lahedja. So I might have thought that since there's a place, right, even in this case where my chatzar is inside of Reuven's chatzar, but since Reuven's chatzar has some places where the animal could get lost, could get sidetracked, could get detoured, I might have thought that I don't take any responsibility while the animal is in transit. Kamash malon the samcha daite. So kamash malon, no. That I will say when the parties are in agreement that this is what's happening, and I know the animal is not going to get lost. If I instruct Reuven to patch the animal and go ahead and have it come to me, I bear responsibility from the moment that the animal leaves Reuven's domain. Incredible. Amar Rafuna. Hashol kadam Hachaver. So we'll say another. So we'll say that ends that sugya. New sugya. Amar Rafuna. Hashol kadam Hachaver. Baka bo kino. Lo baka bo lo kino. So we'll say very interesting case. I borrow an axe from Reuven. So we'll say, so the shaila is over here. At what point in time do I acquire the axe as a borrower? So Rav Huna seems to say that if I used it to chop wood, once I use it to chop wood, I acquire it as a shoel. If I don't use it to chop wood, I don't acquire it to shoel. So we'll say, this is very interesting, right? So this is in significant contrast to what we just saw before, because up until now, what we were talking about over here is essentially, even once the animal is in transit, or the object is in transit, once it's in transit through my instruction or through my what was the word? My instruction or my acceptance. I used a different word before. Okay, through my instruction or through my acquiescence, right? Ultimately, I bear responsibility. Now Rav Huna comes along and says, no. If you borrow an object, you're actually not considered. You're not the shoel. You don't acquire it until you use it. So Moshe says, what does that mean? What does that mean? Lemai, ilem of the onsin. So Moshe, if you want to say what that means is, I'm not responsible for anything that happens to it, even for like extenuating circumstances, until I use it. Moshe says, how could that be? Maishna para dimishas she'ela. So the Gemara says, but that's not true. What did we just say? We just said by a cow, right? Even once that cow is in transit, if it's in transit either through my instruction or through my agreement, ultimately I am responsible for it. What does it mean responsible for it? Fully responsible for it. So for a cow, I'm fully responsible even when the animal's in transit, but for an axe, I'm only chayiv until I use it? How does that make? In other words, we'll say, what the Martin is saying is like this: I borrow an axe from Reuven. Okay, I borrow it. I put it down in my garage. So Rav Huna makes it sound like if the axe is stolen, right, tomorrow, but I didn't use it yet, I'm not chayiv. How could that be? The moment I take it, I'm a borrower, whether I use it or not, and therefore I should be chayiv for everything. What's going on over here? So we'll say, this is very interesting. Allah lechazara. So we'll say, now watch this. This is very interesting. The Gemara says, what we mean is for retraction. Watch this. It's Thursday. I go to Reuven and say, Reuven, I want to borrow your axe. Reuven says, no problem. He gets the axe, he gives it to me. Right? I have it in my hand, I bring it to my house, I put it down. Thursday afternoon, Reuven calls me up, he says, you know what, I changed my mind. I want my axe back. So we'll say, now, what's the halacha? So Rav Huna seems to say, well, it depends. If I have used the axe already, the period of she'el of borrowing has been initiated, and Reuven can't retract. If I have not yet used the axe, then although I am a shoel for liability purposes, Reuven could ask for the axe back. Okay, fascinating. So the Gemara says, lo baka masi mishal hadebe. I'm sorry, I read that. Baka ba lo masi hadebe mishalbe. If halacha l'maisa I use the axe, Reuven cannot renege on the period of borrowing. Lo baka, but if I did not yet use the axe, then masi mashal hadebe. Then Reuven could ask for it back. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows: upliga. They both say now, what's at play over here? So they both say it seems to be the machlokes, and Rashi highlights this. Rashi says the kasavra ein mashiach kona b'shomrim. Well, so we're going to see over here that the fundamental shaila is what we know that in general, for example, not in a shomer situation, transactional situation, I buy an axe from you. This is back to our Bava Kama days. I buy an axe from you. At what point in time do I acquire the axe? Mashiach. Remember again, I will say, we paskin that even though midoraisa ma'os konos, even though midoraisa money acquires movable property, but we don't allow money to acquire movable property. Remember again, why? Shema yomar nisriful chitecha ba'aliyah. We're concerned about a whole bunch of things. So therefore, a movable property, so you have to, possession, mashiach. So the shaila of us we're going to do with over here is, does mashiach affect a shomer? I should say differently. Does mashiach concretize a shomer relationship, or does usage concretize the shomer relationship? So here we go. The Gemara says, "Upligid Rabbi Ami." And the Gemara said this idea argues in Rabbi Ami. What does Rabbi say? Rabbi Ami, Hamashal Kardum Shal Hektish Mal Lefi Tovas Hanashebo. So this is interesting. If I go ahead and I borrow an axe of Hegdish. So I'll say, so again, I borrowed an axe, and it turns out that the axe belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. What's the halacha? Ma'al, I have done me'ilah. Remember again, me'ilah means illegal use of consecrated property. So ma'al, lefi tovas hanashabo, in accordance with, I will say, I'm sorry, it's not bar. I lent. I went ahead, I have an axe of Hekdish, and I lent it to Reuben. This was an accident, right? I lent him an axe of Hekdish. So what's the halacha? I, the lender, have committed me'ilah. Now I will say, how do I quantify my me'ilah? So remember again, in accordance with the benefit that is accrued through lending something. As I will say, when you lend something to someone, there's a certain amount of goodwill that is created. That goodwill in halacha has a value. It's like on a balance sheet, right? There's goodwill, right? I think, right? Any accountants here? I think I'll remember a little bit from my accounting days, right? That there's, right? So ultimately, again, the halacha is that I committed me'ilah, and the value of my me'ilah is the goodwill that is created through lending something to someone. Look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Ma'al, Hamash l'shalim lehekdish keren shenena b'shalaso. Umahi ana aso. What's the anah that I get by lending an axe of Hekdish? So the Gemara says, Umahi ana aso. Lefi tovas ana shabo, omdim bo, kamo hu rotze lihios nechsar mishalo, lahachzik lo hashoel tovas hana kizu tovas hana. So we'll say, so how do we value this? How much money would I pay for Reuven to like me? I know that sounds a little sad, right? But in other words, how much is it worth for me, for Reuven to have good feelings towards you? Because again, this could help for business, to help for a lot of things. So how much would I pay? That amount, so to speak, that's the amount that I would have to pay to Hekdish. That's the amount that represents the Me'ilah. So the Gemara says, V'chavero mutar levaki bo lechatchila. Now I will say, this is very interesting. And after I pay that amount to the Beis HaMikdash, so Reuven, who borrowed the axe from me, he is allowed to use the axe. Right? He's allowed to use the axe up to that amount. Essentially what I've done over here is, I've, so to speak, redeemed that amount of usage from the Beis HaMikdash. All right, so I say, so the Gemara says, but 1 second, v'ilo kino amay mal. I will say, but based on what we just said, what's the halacha? Based on what we just said is the only time that really a shoel acquires the object is when he uses it. So if I lent an axe of Hekdish to Reuven, if Reuven didn't yet use it, then there should be no me'ilah. So ultimately, v'lo kano amay mal v'amay chaver motelaka b'lechatchila. So nehedre v'lo lekanya v'lo limo. So we'll say, so again, Rav Huna, if you are right, and the only time that a shoel really acquires the object is when he uses it. So in this case over here, when I accidentally lent a Hekdish axe to Reuven, so instead of getting into how much is the Me'ilah and Reuven's allowed to use it, stop. As long as Reuven didn't use it, grab it back, return it back to the Beis HaMikdash, no harm, no foul, right? Nothing happened. We didn't use it, therefore there's no Hekdish. So I will say, but what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha l'maisa, Me'ilah is affected when, or Me'ilah is transgressed when? Immediately upon acquisition of the object. So you see from here that halacha l'maisa, shomer does acquire, or shoel does acquire the object the moment that he receives it, to which the Gemara says, Upligid Rabbi Lazar. This argues Rabbi Lazar. What does Rabbi Lazar say? Don't Rabbi Lazar. K'derach sheteknu mashiach b'lakuchos kak tiknu mashiach b'shomrim. Rabbi Lazar says the same way that in order to acquire movable property in a purchase, right, in a transaction, a purchase, so too Chazal instituted mashiach by shomrim as well. Right, so we're focused on a shol right now. That when does a shol, so to speak, acquire the object? From the time of mashiach. So you see from here, so machlokes Rabbi Lazar and Rafuna. Rafuna says the shol only acquires the object really when he uses it. And ultimately, again, Rabbi Lazar says, no, he acquires it as soon as he takes it into his possession, as soon as there's mashiach. And I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, and now, by the way, come full circle, our Mishnah is introducing to us the concept that maybe even takes responsibility even before mashiach. When the object is in transit, as long as it's in transit through his instruction or through his agreement, to which the Moshe that supports this. The same way that Chazal instituted mashiach in a regular case of purchase, kach tiknu mashiach b'shomrim. So too Chazal said, when does a shomer acquire responsibility over an object? Ultimately, again, with mashiach. The moment that he takes physical possession, even before he's used it. Ukeshem amud beis. Ukeshem shekarka niknis bekesef b'shtar b'chazaga. And the same way that karka, that real property, is acquired with kesef, shtar, and chazaga. Or also just in general. Remember again, we're getting right a little chazara of hilchos kinyanim over here. So metaltalin, movable property, is only acquired with mashiach. So now the Gemara is saying to us, really again Rabbi Lazar is saying to us that Allah said the same way that you need mashiach in a regular case of transaction, you also need mashiach by shomrim. That's the only way that a shomer acquires the object is through mashiach. And similarly, the same way that karka, that real property, is acquired with kesef, shtar, and chazaka, money, document, or proprietary act, kach schirus nikne bekesef, b'shtar, or b'chazaka. So to schirus ultimately again is acquired with kesef, shtar, and chazaka. So the Gemara says, Schiros, I don't understand. Schiros, ma'avidite. Why are we bringing up anything regarding Schiros? Right? Why is this even coming up? So in other words, we'll say, it doesn't seem to flow, right? You said the same way that you acquire karka with kesef, shtar, and chazaka. So schiros is also acquired. Now schiros is a rental, right? Schiros is also with kesef, shtar, and chazaka. Why are you bringing up schiros over here? Schiros ma'avidite. What does schiros have to do with anything? Rashi says over here, ma'avidite lahaknos achi yimshoch umay chazaka b'lo mashiach mishkachas. Like in a case of rental, how is rental coming up over here in terms of mashiach? And how is rent, right? Why are you bringing this up? And what's kesef, shtar, and chazaka? Amar Rav Chisda schiros karka. No. What it means is if you're renting property. So Gemara says, if you're renting property, how do you affect the property rental? Kesef, shtar, or chazaka. Okay. Amar Shmuel. So we'll say good. So we'll say that now. Just interestingly enough, how do we pass him? So we'll say we'll see this more. We're going to wait the Meretz Hashem a little bit more till tomorrow, as I have to focus on this. And I'll say, but bepashtos, we already know that we don't pass him like Rafuno. Right? Because remember again, that's the ochap of the Mishnah. The ochap of the Mishnah is, at what point in time, remember, the Mishnah is talking about when does a shoal become a shoal. So the Mishnah is already saying, even when the object is in transit, if it's coming in transit, right, if it's being delivered because, again, of my instruction or because of my agreement, then that's when my liability begins. So obviously, I will say, if my liability is already beginning from then, so then halacha l'maisa, we seem to reject Rav Huna. So in other words, the moment I take possession of it, either through mashiach or even because delivery is happening through my instruction, I become fully liable for the object. And not only that, but if the mashil, if the lender wants to recant, wants to retract, he can't, even though I have not used the object. Okay, incredible. Amar Shmuel. So it's a very interesting case here. Hayman de Gazel Chavitza de Tami Mechavero. Listen to this case. Theft. I steal a cake of pressed figs. Chavitza, Rashi says over here, Chavitza de Tamri, Timarim Hamid Dubakim Yochid, Kari Chavitza, V'ispohen Chamshin Tamri. So we'll say, I steal a cake of pressed figs from Ruvain. Now, I will say, just to understand, the way a cake, right, there was a cake was an objective unit. You would take 50 figs, you would press them together. That's what a cake was. A cake was 50 figs pressed together. Okay. So we'll say, so now, so this cake, like every other cake of pressed figs, had 50 dates. Now watch this. So Gemara says, Agav hadadim is dabnam benun nichi chada. Now we'll say, the way it worked was like this. If you bought a full cake of pressed figs, there was a set price. The price was 49 zuz, right? So 50 figs cost 49 zuz. On the other hand, the Gemara says, chada mizdabin benun. I would say, but if you would sell figs individually, how much would you sell them for? 1 zuz of fig. So I will say, so what's interesting to know about this is, so the cake cost 49 zuz, but yet again, 1 date at a time would be 1 zuz. So again, if I sold the complete cake, I would make 49 zuz. But if I sold the cake full of figs individually, I'd make 50 zuz. So now I know, so you know what's going to be the shaila? What's the shaila now? I stole a cake of pressed figs from Ruvain. So what's the shaila? Assuming that now I ate the cake, right? I ate it, because obviously we know that the halachos of theft are that if the stolen item is extant, you just give them back, and you give that back, and you say, Harish lachal lefanecha, here it is. Assuming I ate the cake. Right? So now, what am I chayiv? Do I have to pay him back what? Do I have to pay him back 49 zuz? Because that's how much a cake would be sold for. Or do I pay him back 50 zuz? Because that's the price if you were to sell them individually. So what's the halacha? Someone says, Lahedjot mishalim chamishim nichi chada. So if Reuben is just a regular guy, so I'll say hedyot, a regular case of theft between 2 regular people, I pay back 49 zuz. Hekdish mishalim chamishim v'chum shayu. So this is very interesting. If I stole from Hekdish, Shavosai, again, remember, the house always wins. The house always wins. So if I go ahead and I pay back, if I stole from Hekdish, I pay back 50 zuz. I pay back 50 zuz. By the way, not only 50 zuz, but remember, when you steal Hekdish and you benefit from Hekdish, there's a penalty fifth. So I have to pay back 50 zuz plus a penalty fifth. So if I say very interesting, look at Rashi. Rashi says lahedjot imishal hedjot hu mishalim lo kimoshe nimkarim biyachad. So again, if I stole from Reuven, and Reuven is just a private individual, so I go ahead and I pay him back 49 zuz as a cake is sold. And essentially, if I stole from a regular person, a hedyot, we're mekel. Mekel means we look at the price of the cake in total, and I have to pay back 49 zuz. If I go ahead and I steal from Hekdish, we're machmir, and you have to pay the extra zuz, 50 zuz, as if it was being sold as a cake. Sorry, as if it was being sold as individuals, right? And halacha ma'isa plus the penalty fifth. Okay, so the Gemara says, Masha'inkin b'mazik. The lo mishalim chumsha. I will say, the Gemara just says, by the way, just interesting aside, the halacha of chomesh, right, of paying a penalty fifth to Hekdish, is only when you benefited from Hekdish. If you damaged Hekdish, you have to pay back what you damaged, but there is not the obligation of an additional fifth. We'll see why that is. So just an interesting distinction over here. I damage Hekdish, I have to pay damages, but I don't have a penalty fifth. I benefit, right, illegally benefits from Hekdish, I have to pay damages, right, value plus the additional fifth. So the Gemara says, watch this. The Amar Mar, by the way, where does that, the Gemara just jumps on that last detail. Where do you get that from? The Amar Mar, Ish ki yochal kodesh. The pasuk says, if you consume something that belongs to Hekdish, so I consumed it, I got benefit from it. In that case, the Gemara says, Chamishiso yosef alav, you have to add on an additional fifth. Prat lamazik, this comes to exclude a damager case. So I'll say, in a case of damages, halacha lamaisa, I have to pay back what I damaged, but I don't have to pay back the additional fifth. Okay, so I'll say, so now, but let's leave that on the side. That's not really it's not really our primary point right now. What's our primary point? Our primary point, I will say, is that again, I stole the cake of pressed figs. If you steal it, and I consumed it. If you go ahead and you sell a cake is sold for 49 zuz. If you sell it individually, each one is a zuz. The total of the cake is 50 zuz. So what do I pay back? So the Gemara makes a distinction. If I stole from a regular guy, pay back 49 zuz, the value of a cake. If I went ahead and I stole from Hekdish, pay back 50 zuz. 50 zuz, the value of each, as if the dates were sold individually, parentheses, plus the additional fifth. Fine. So here we go. So Maskeh for Rabbi Barabaye, Lahedjot Amay Mishalim Chamishim Nechi Chada. I don't understand. Why is it that when I steal from Ruvain, right? I just stole from Ruvain. And I stole from Ruvain a cake of pressed figs. So now we're saying for Ruvain, I only have to pay back 49 zuz, which is the value had I sold an entire cake. But why? The Gemara says, "Amay Mishayim Chamishin Ichi Chada, Neimale Ana Chada Chada Havim Mizamnele." But I can't Ruvain say to me, Silber, you stole a cake of pressed figs. I wasn't going to sell this as a cake. I was going to sell it how? One by one. And as such, you deprived me of 50 zuz, not 49 zuz. So why do I get off, right, by just going ahead and paying him 49 zuz and don't have to pay him 50 zuz? Rabbi Yoshua. No. Boss said, listen to this. This is really interesting. Back to our Bava Kama days. Shaman beis sa'aba osa sadatnan. Boss, if you remember we had this. I let my ox go into Ruvain's field, and my ox eats a row of produce. So, boss, remember again. The Gemara said, we do not go ahead and say, okay, you ate a row of produce. How much was that produce worth? We don't do that. Instead of, remember again, we say, how much is the value of the field with this row of produce and without this row of produce? I will say, those are two vastly different valuations, right? Because the amount, for example, so like the value of a row of produce when looked at by itself is worth one amount. But I will say that is much more than when you look at the field as a whole with one more row or one extra row. Right? The value of a field is very little difference between one extra row, one. So I'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here when it comes to damages, we generally go ahead and try to find a more makel way, a more lenient way to evaluate the damages done. Therefore, we apply that same concept over here, where halacha l'maisa again, because I stole a cake of pressed figs. So if there's a choice between valuing it as an intact cake versus one by one, we'll go with the intact cake, and therefore halacha l'maisa only have to pay Ruvain 49 zuz. Incredible. L'memra, the Savar Shmuel. So I'll say, what does it say? The Shmuel holds, din hedyot, lav kedin gavo adami. So I will say, what clearly comes out over here is that Shmuel holds that halacha l'maisa, we do not learn out the din of regular damages or damages. We don't learn out the halachos of regular situations from hektish situations, right? That hektish and regular situations are treated very differently. So literally again, Slimar says the din hejot lav kedin gavoa, that the halachos when there's a regular transaction or a regular situation, we do not learn that out ultimately again from hektish. Now is that true? The Gemara says what we learned. Natal eveno kora mehektish lo mal. So once again, let's at least begin this case over here. So again, what Shmuel is highlighting to us is there's two sets of rules. There's a set of rules when, in this case, there's theft from hegdish, and a rule of when there's a theft from hedyot, from a regular person. Same idea that in damages. There's a rule, right, when you do damages to hegdish, and a rule when you do damages to hedyot. Essentially, what does the rule, how do you espouse the rule? It's very simple. When I do damage, or I do something, or I take something from hegdish, ultimately, again, we use the most machmir valuation for that. When I do damage or theft from hedyot or mekel. That's the simple distinction. So the point over here is we do not learn out the din hedyot from din hektish. The Gemara says, is that true? The Gemara says, watch this. But what about the following? Vatnan. Not all evan okora me hektish lomal. We'll say, if I take a stone or a beam from hektish, the act of taking it is not an act of mi'ilah. Now, how could that be? So Rashi says over here, lo ma'al v'haso kimna kegon shenicha api aruba deloshan. So we'll say, now we're going to see over something very interesting. We're going to see two things that the idea over here is, if you go ahead and you take something from hegdish and utilize it in a way that doesn't change it. So ultimately, one has not committed mi'ilah. We'll say, we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem with this piece tomorrow. And again, we will solidify our distinctions between hektish and hedyot, both in the act of theft and the act of damages. Meretz Hashem to be continued. Shkayach, everyone.